Hi, my name is Bob Greenyer and I'm a volunteer with the Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project. So welcome this 20th of October 2024, where I will ask the question, is the new fire here? Or as I like to call it, the new eternal fire, because it's always been here. How is everyone? Hi, Gordon Doherty, Harry, Jonathan Gibson is in the house, Quote 10, Ken Pratt, Trevor, Louis Navarro, hello Louis Navarro, Dragon Master 391, Muggle 1, Lion Hunter, Earthward Jim, hello Artifact, hi Edonius, Vanilla Isis, Mika Avila, Samuel Parsons, NG, Matthew Reynolds and CH, Samuel Keeley. Honestly, is that really Samuel Keeley? Hway. Hello, Crypto Alchemist, you made it. Hi, Simeon Hine. It's a great shame that I am not going to be doing what I was going to do tonight, which is Crop Circle 3. I will have to delay that for 2 weeks. I'll explain later. And we are going to just address a couple of things that have been on the airwaves. Hi, Humberto Diaz and Steve A. Hello, Claire Westwood and Daz Pizzazz and Casey the Cat and William Schwant and John Weir. What a wonderful quorum we have. Brandon B. and Zalapino. Hopefully I've got the inflection right on the end. Venom K and Trapzilla. Wonderful. And Laszlo Pap, hi. I saw you recently too. Okay. Right, what are we looking at there? We are looking at some sort of torus sphere-like object sucking in. You could ask yourself, am I actually referring to the new fire being in that zone, that point of phase singularity where matter or something is being sucked into the core? Maybe. Hi, Mark Dame and Cilio. Technology Envoy and Alan Smith, it's wonderful to have you here. Fantastic. You can answer my question directly, Alan Smith, when I come to it. So, okay. All right. Well, first on the order of the day is a quick shout out, because hopefully in the next week or so, but hopefully on a specific date, it depends whether it gets authorized, we will be launching the Kickstarter for the remake of the steps to the discovery of electronuclear collapse. Dr. Takaaki Matsumoto's seminal work, which for the first time will include incredible new imagery like this one here. Well, when I say new, it's not that new because it's actually in the book itself. For those that have got hold of the book, they will recognize it as figure 3 on page 167. Okay, so here is figure 3 on page 167. Okay, not quite as glorious Technicolor, is it? So this is kind of what we're going to be upgrading to. And you can see on that imagery there, we have possibly polarizations in the copper, like we observed in the analysis of Henk Uren, and also a completely seemingly unaffected area in the center, and this kind of vortex spiral coming in to a resting zone. Absolutely beautiful. Now, if all goes to plan, this will be launched on the 24th of December. Sorry, but this is the way we do it in Europe. The 24th of the 10th, 24. And I'm hoping to add, and this will be basically 1 minute to midnight. And we're going to add 48 days. And that will get us to 1 minute towards the 12th of the 12th of the 12th, where it will finish. The reason I've chosen that is because they're all classic exotic vacuum object fractal toroidal subtor structure divisions. And so everything's a division of 12. except for 10. And the reason I like to choose this end date here is that 10 years ago, on this very day, on the 12th of the 12th of the 12th, this day here, the 12th day of the 12th month of 2012, we did our first replication of a cold fusion experiment, and that was our second attempt at Francesco Celani's wire experiment. And I actually have the device that did that in the room next to me. I have the honor of holding on to that, thank you to Ryan Hunt and Matthew Villat, who worked so hard to do that replication. So I thought that was very apropos. So what are we doing here? We're going to do a quick presentation. Reason being is that very shortly I will be flying to do a podcast on the Matt Beal podcast in Florida, assuming that nothing is destroyed there. I understand that he has some other fairly big name people that were being interviewed by him this month. I think one of them is to be Graham Hancock, who was recently on Joe Rogan. And thank you to all those people that sent me that image. Yes, it's very interesting. It does look like the things that we have been talking about over these many years. And yes, I did notice the Maltese cross on there in a number of places. Yes, so I will be in the same month as Mr. Hancock, and I'll tell you a little bit more about some other things that are going to happen in the coming weeks and months. But I have an overview here, and we're going to start by just looking at a little editorial by Hal Fox on EVs in 1996, approaching 3 decades ago. Then we'll have a brief commentary about where I believe Rossi's ECAT SK NGU stands. Never give up is like Rossi never gave up, or the device never gives up. It's whichever way you like to look at it. And then the Eng8, or their announcement, which came out the last couple of days, and then holding the claimant's feet to the new fire. So that is what we will be discussing instead of Crop Circle 3 today. So I will get up the relevant PDF now that I would like to discuss first. And it was in a newsletter that was kind of sponsored by Hal Fox, called New Energy Times, as I understand it. And it is from this coming month, but in 1996, so 29 years ago. Here we are. New Energy News, not New Energy Times. Don't confuse it with New Energy Times. Stephen Krivet's blog or newsletter. And Hal Fox. Who is Hal Fox? Hal Fox is the person that, as far as I understand it, bought the patents from Ken Shoulders whilst they were still valid, with an aim to commercialize them. Because Ken, he kind of developed the screening technology for microelectronics, but no one could argue that he made all of microelectronics. And he developed the quadrupole mass spectrometer, and when he got it to a point where it was a thing that could be made, that went off into another place to be developed. And this thing about EVs, as he was calling them then, it was, as I recognized when I started to understand the enormity of their applications, it's not something any one person can do. You have to free the idea to the world to maximize its potential. And he did write very good patents, though, that we can all learn from. So what is Hal Fox doing here? He's asking for a Nobel Prize for 2 groups. And he's specifically asking for Stanley Pons and Martin Fleischmann. and Kenneth Radford Shoulders. As I understand it, you cannot receive a Nobel Prize unless you're alive. And the only member of these three people that is alive now is Stanley Pons. But let's just read this through. If you haven't seen this before, it's quite interesting because it gives you a little bit of context about what EVs are. So now that we understand the importance and nature of cold fusion, it is time to nominate Stanley Pons, Martin Fleischmann, Fellow of the Royal Society, and Kenneth Radford Shoulders for a Nobel Prize. Pons and Fleischmann deserve the prize for their fundamental discovery of cold fusion, and Kenneth Radford Shoulders deserves a part of the prize for his excellent work in discovering and revealing how nuclear reactions take place in both palladium heavy water system and in sono-fusion system. A further degree of experimental information about nuclear reactions has been added by the Neil Gleason process. A summary of these fundamental discoveries illustrates how important they have been and will be in the rapid advancement of the treatment of radioactive wastes. Here we go. Especially radioactive slurries. The production of thermal energy without neutrons, and probably the development of factory-made scarce elements. This is nearly 30 years ago. We have to be utterly relentless to make sure this happens. The importance of these discoveries merits a tutorial on the power of ion-carrying charge clusters. Creating a charge cluster. Charge clusters can be created in a variety of environments ranging from near vacuum to some liquids. Kenneth Shoulders has taught in both his book and his patents how to make and recognize charge clusters. These charge clusters are created by most sparks, lightning, and more professionally by techniques demonstrated by Shoulders in several of his patents. Recently, it has been determined that charge clusters can be created in liquids. Recently. This is 30 years ago, pretty much. Oh, but damn it. Provided that the correct electrodes, molarity, voltage, and current are properly chosen. For some early research in which, and in our experiments, you don't even need electrodes, other than you need something that causes charge separation, okay, or matter to fall apart. For some early research in which it is believed that charge clusters were being created in ethylene glycol with silicon, see the work of Waring and Benjamini. It is unlikely that the authors realized the nature of the sparks emitted from the silicon when the voltage was increased beyond the normal range for luminescence. It is also believed that the effective method for promoting nuclear reactions in the Neil Gleason process is the formation and use of charge clusters, although this observation was not known to the authors at the time the paper was written. It is believed that in their atmospheric spark gap experiments, Reiter and Feil are creating and observing the remarkable effects of charge clusters. So he has this little diagram here. Target 5,000 volts. This is a learning exercise here. Learning exercise. Don't necessarily need this magnetic field here. Charge clusters in a strong electric field. And this is the accelerating field for the charge cluster. Figure 1 illustrates a typical 1 micron charge cluster. We've seen these kind of structures, size, impact marks, consisting of about 100 billion electrons. So one little 1 micron is consisting of 100 billion electrons. Due to some as yet unknown high degree of dynamics, the cluster creates internal forces that are stronger than the mutual repulsion forces of the electrons. Due to some as yet unknown, so in 1996, there wasn't an understanding of how this thing could hold so many electrons in its structure. A high degree of dynamics, well, we do know there is a lot of electrodynamics going on. The cluster creates internal forces that are stronger than the mutual repulsion forces of the electrons. So I argue that current loops and current counter loops are formed. They produce a toroidal moment. The toroidal moment is able to produce an Aharonov bomb effect and a phase singularity and a magnetic vortex that pulls electrons in, causes them to form condensate in the core, and this rinse and repeats on each fractal level. So it's a multiple structured and it's organized based on the toroidal moment, which comes out of the electric field and the magnetic fields of the substructures. The end result is that the cluster is stable, at least while it's moving. As shown in the illustration, the negative cluster can attract and retain a relatively small number of positive ions, 1 ion for about every 100,000 electrons. In fact, the high degree of concentrated charge in a cluster will ionize gases and liquids under proper conditions. For example, if a charged cluster is created in a hydrogen atmosphere, some ionized hydrogen ions, we call protons, will be attracted to the charged cluster. In figure 1, the figure we are looking at here, in figure 1, we depict the charge cluster in a strong electrostatic field with a downstream anode connected to a positive 5,000 volt power supply. In this strong electric gradient, the charge cluster and the attached ions will accelerate to a velocity of about 1/10 the speed of light. So, doesn't talk about the distance between this charge cluster and the target, okay? But he does say that they are accelerated with a 5,000 volt power supply to about 1/10 the speed of light. If we were to build a proton accelerator, we would have to use an accelerating voltage of about 9 million volts to impart the same velocity to a cluster of protons. So you can see how much more efficient this is. It's phenomenally efficient. Just 5,000 volts, not 9 million volts. Yeah? Therefore, this simple device is essentially a high energy accelerator of positive ions, but based on low energy initial source. We know that the proton is about 18,036 times as 1,836 times as heavy as the electron. If we calculate the impact momentum, mv squared, that has been provided to each proton attached to the charge cluster, we find that the impact energy, according to standard nuclear physics, is sufficient to cause nuclear reactions. So in this case, if you are creating a charge cluster, accelerating it with a reasonably easy potential to attain, and you're hitting a target that is susceptible to nuclear reactions caused by momentum that would be generated with protons traveling at 1/10 the speed of light, okay, you have a situation where it's sufficient to cause nuclear reactions. Using the charge cluster. As discovered and patented by Shoulders 6, charge clusters can be used to make or create more energy output than input to the device. As discovered and now as a patent pending. Neal and Gleason have found a method, Neal-Gleason process, by which radioactive elements can be stabilized. The method by which charge clusters can reduce radioactivity is conceptually easy to understand if one looks at the chart of nuclides and isotopes. The high mass elements are replete with radioactive isotopes. On the other hand, the lower mass elements and their isotopes are more stable. The role of the charge cluster and its load of positive ions is to impact the radioactive heavy element, cause the elements to become unstable, promote spontaneous fission, and produce two normally smaller fragments which are usually stable. The process is basically simple when you know how to do it. Well, that was then. Of course, around the same time, another person that was considering these structures were the same as microball lightning was one Takaaki Matsumoto, and it was he that identified, along with Ken Shoulders, that actually vast numbers of nuclei are simultaneously changed rather than this bullet target approach inside a structure and new elements come out. In this case, this is a lead sphere and out of it is coming predominantly carbon. And what you will also see in the data, which it's absolutely spectacular, is he has one of his carbon filaments that looks like basically like a hair in Matsumoto's work, but he talked about ordinary elements coming out of the material, but he showed an SEM with material coming out and a little discussion on what was there. But we now have the EDX, and I'm telling you that the EDX data coming out of this carbon tube is the same spread spectrum of elements that we see coming out of those apples and the substructures in the cavitation process by Bin Juen Huang, which I imaged and talked about earlier this year in many presentations. So I am all bar a cherry on top, convinced that the same process is occurring. It's just being got to in a slightly different initial state, but it is down to charge separation and extreme hydrodynamic shear. Okay. Now, now that we understand the process, at least one patent is pending on the use of embodiment of the process by which low-energy input clusters can promote selected nuclear reactions which will produce high amounts of thermal energy. For example, let us assume that we have that lead 208 to be precise, is the target element. We bombard the lead with a charge cluster. It becomes unstable and splits into two halves and provides us with two atoms of palladium 104. The process is little more complicated, but because we have to deal, with the mass of the impacting ion. However, to keep it simple, assume that the lead 208 atom with a mass of 208, effectively all bar a bit, is impacted, caused to fission and produces two palladium 104 atoms. The total mass produced is this, blah, blah, blah. Note that the mass produced here is less than the mass of the original lead atom. You can see a diddly squat bit there. It's like 0.1817 or so, or less than of a megaelectron volt. However, the difference in mass is not much, but according to Einstein's formula E equals mc squared, we can calculate the energy equivalent of the missing mass fraction. Of course, even a small amount of missing mass multiplied by the speed of light squared will be a significant amount of energy. Therefore, this reaction, if we can cause it to be produced, will provide thermal energy to our system. Okay, this was then in 1996. By around about 2003, Ken Shoulders was talking in MIT to people in the cold fusion, maybe it was 2006, and he gave a presentation where he said, yes, you will be able to produce heat, but sooner or later you will destroy the reactor or the reactants. The so-called fuel will be, not in the optimal state, let's put it like that. He said that the approach you should probably go for is one that he has this patent, which he's talking about here, and I think it was awarded, which is the direct electrical production. And this is where you have a negative electrode emitting the charge cluster, the exotic vacuum object, and it comes along through a tube which has a half bias along it, and then ideally with a photoelectric emitter of electrons, and then you have on the far end your positive anode, and as it goes down it actually causes extra electrons to be emitted and consumed, and it's kind of like self-feeds on itself to gain a lot of electrons, and then it hits the target releasing those electrons, and the thermal energy needs to be recouped from the anode, and you end up by generating power. Okay, so he advised trying to just generate electricity rather than going for thermal energy. Okay. Making scarce elements. In the preceding section, we discussed the possibility of using lead as a target material, impacting the lead with charge clusters and transmuting the lead into palladium to get excess thermal energy. If we could accomplish that feat, then we would have thermal energy plus a more valuable element produced than we started with. Nature may not be so kind. Well, I think it is so kind. And I'll tell you why. Give me just a second. I need to just drop a few images into some slides. Because way back in 2017, I was analyzing, and I published this, I was analyzing the nickel foil that was produced by Suhas Ralkar for his Echo reactor, which I tested with Dr. George Eagley, and I posted, and you can go and look at for this on the MFMP's Facebook page, and you can also go and look for the associated YouTube link. I asked this question, which I will give you in just a second. Honest, Governor. So, the question was, why does the ultrasonically processed nickel foil contain grains of, I'll show it here now. Why does the ultrasonically processed nickel foil contain grains of gold, palladium, and silver? The ultrasonically plasma treated foil deposited in a nickel sulfate solution on steel. So the mix it was made from was nickel, sulfur, hydrogen, heavy hydrogen, oxygen, and whatever the constituents of the steel. And if you remember this, it was this iron plate. In fact, I actually have the iron plate in here. In the drawer here, I have said iron plate. Do I? I think it's in here somewhere. Oh! It's definitely in here somewhere, but I can't find it immediately. There we go. Maybe I'll find it at the end. It's in my drawer here. An iron plate, and on that, I think it was about an inch wide, and I'm going to mix my units here, about 4 mil thick, maybe 3 mil thick. Maybe a bit wider than that. I'd be able to tell you if I got it out of the drawer. And he had like a bias of a few hundred volts, where we heard that before, and a few thousand volts pulsing at, I think, 19.46 kilohertz. And so that was pulsing through the water vapor, exactly the same kind of process that you saw in the water flow plasma discharge of Bogdanovich et al. And that was producing rapidly a nickel foil on there. And what we saw on the SEM, I'm just about to show you, rather than having to dig out the images from the video, I can just show you the images that were in Facebook here. And this was from April the 7th, 2017. This was originally shared. And here we go. This was the data that was coming off the SEM as I was capturing it. So, you can see here, and I almost wish that I had taken a look at this sphere in the center of this overall structure, because the sphere is surrounded by what definitely looks to me, having looked at a lot of SEMs, like a carbon area where it should be. This sphere looks a little bit crenellated to me, and I just wonder, given that this is a mid-tone between these bright spots here, which we know are heavier elements, and this is also nickel, so this is actually brighter than this. I suspect, my friends, that little sphere there is an iron-rich crenellated microsphere. It looks crenellated, it looks spherical, it's in the center of the structure, and it's slightly darker than the nickel bulk here. But in spectrum 36, it was 69.3% silver. Okay? And in this spectrum 37, this little bright spot in here, it was 19.1% gold and 4.5% palladium. And very, very clear spectrum of gold here. Very, very clear. Okay? And again, if we go back, very, very clear. The multi-peaks of silver. Very, very clear. Okay? So, what is being speculated by Hal Fox in 1996? What is being speculated by Hal Fox in 1996? Charge clusters impacting something, creating heavier elements or different elements. Okay? To be fair, he's trying to start with lead and making palladium. No, I think you can maybe see here there is some tungsten here. So maybe the discharge electrode was tungsten. But I don't think the tungsten's there. No, the tungsten's not there. I've just selected, 0% tungsten. It's probably because we were looking at the fuel at the same time. Yeah, there's no tungsten there. So this is actually making heavier elements. This is literally fusion, okay? And I'm pretty certain, and I can't believe I only saw this earlier today when I was preparing a couple of images for the talk. I'm pretty certain this little sphere in the middle of this sea of carbon with the ring of nickel around the outside, I think we'll probably find that is iron-rich crenellated sphere. I wish maybe I've got this sample somewhere and I can go and have a look at it again. It would be really wonderful to find that. But what we know is this DC bias of around about a couple of 100 volts and the 2000 volts or so, or over 1000 volts pulse discharges, that is basically exactly the same as the Bogdanovich work that revealed toroidal plasmoid, they say, clusters moving around on a nickel plate for 2 days. So 100% certainly, these two systems, which were effectively doing the same thing in terms of electrodynamics, with water flow, plasma discharge, we know the Bogdanovich ones showed ball lightning, monopoles, and these glowing plasmoids moving around on the surface, which are charge clusters, which are fractal toroidal structures, which are micro ball lightning, moving around on the surface. Same process. In this case, it produced these heavier elements. Okay, so let me go back to the Fox. So where he is saying nature may not be so kind, what I can say is, yes, nature is delivering. It has delivered. 100% certainly it delivered, and we know it's a charge cluster that did it. We know it's an exotic vacuum object that did it. We know it's a fractal toroidal moment-bearing fractal toroidal electrodynamic structure that did it. The idea that a particular nuclear reaction is possible does not mean that the same reaction is probable. Yes, I agree with that. And if you are starting with lead, Mr. Hal Fox, I think you're going to probably end up by creating a lot of elements that are in the body, lighter elements. Because you need to push this harder to make heavy elements, and but you can go lighter and then make heavier elements. Okay, Nature will inform us as we ask the correct questions what we can and cannot accomplish. However, it is believed that there are many scarce elements in the periodic table which we will be able to make from more plentiful elements. Well, if you've got what we had there, I would argue these are plentiful elements. Nickel, sulfur, hydrogen, deuterium, oxygen, and steel, which probably contains nickel, and it probably contains molybdenum, it probably contains carbon, it probably contains iron. In fact, I should pretty much hope it would contain iron. We can create silver, not so common, but certainly gold we might consider is uncommon, and palladium is uncommon. Okay. It is the judgment of this author that an element in nature is scarce because the probability of making such an element is low. Boom! There it is, my friends. The probability, it's the logical thing. And I extended that commentary in my presentation on my slides in my poster session in 2019 at ICCF 22 in Assisi in Italy by saying the probability is given in the crustal abundance, in my view. Okay? Now, by creating a situation where you are forcing it with elements that are already most of the way there in a combination, you could, with effort, get recipes that would produce a bigger yield of a particular element. Thank you very much, Vanilla Ice. It's very kind of you. That's good. That's going to be definitely a couple of coffees for me. I'm going to need them in the next couple of days, that's for sure. Meaning that the production of such an element must require energy. However, it appears that creating energy with nuclear reactions will be relatively simple. It is also expected that we will be able to find the combination of ions and target elements that can be used together with input energy to create the scarce elements of our choice. That's just almost exactly what I just said, right? Back in 1996. Isn't this a lovely thing, right? Summary. Now you realize the enormous importance of what Pons, Fleischmann, Shoulders and others have accomplished. They should get the Nobel Prize. They deserve the recognition. A new line of research and development in physics has now been provided. At least one, and probably several new patent applications have resulted from this new line of research and development. In summary, we know now how we can do the following. 1. Clean up radioactive wastes. Yep, we do. But they don't want to know. They really don't want to know. 2. Create clean, abundant thermal energy with no neutrons. Yep. That's what is happening in the Binzhen reactor. We have the nuclear products. We have the mechanistic magnetohydrodynamic structures delivering the fractal toroidal moment, stripping material out of the reactor and converting it into standard elements, stable elements. Now we know if we take the Kladoff approach and we force it and we get the water in circulation over a period of time, we will end up creating heavier and heavier elements, like was seen in the plasma flow discharge, effectively experiment producing that nickel foil of Sutras-Ralkar. And if you push that and push it and push that, ultimately you might end up by creating some radioactive elements that emit neutrons. But the process at the basic level is not producing neutrons. Then, create factory-produced scarce elements. There we go. Note to investors, FIC has filed a patent application that will cover a broad range of nuclear transmutation topics. FIC is seeking interest in help from brokers to help market the soon-to-be-filled public registration of FIC stock, if you can help. So basically, Hal is trailering the energy company that he set up for dealing with, or from promoting Ken Shoulders' patents. And he talks about mechanisms for beta decay and so on. Okay? So here we have a situation where a very well-connected key person in the story of Kenneth Radford Shoulders, who owns the patents, is calling for investment. And do you know what happened? That's what happened. Or did it? Did something actually happen? Was technology made with this technology? Was the technology already in existence, just it was called something different? It was in a black project? Don't know. But those patents have expired. And due to the mastery and deftness of Ken Shoulders, they are now in the public domain. Are they being used? I think they are. We'll come on to that next. Right. So back to our overview for our short presentation and what we're going to discuss today. Rossi's ECAT SKU. Okay, my view on this is the test was insufficient to prove that the capacity and weight of the box could not be explained either by lithium batteries or even more easily by lithium aluminium hydride and a heater to produce 522 grams of hydrogen, which would breathe with the air to produce all of the energy to account for the observed effects. There's one caveat I have with that, is that there was a picture captured either by Frank Ackland or by the engineer who integrated the ECAT with his Twizy, and that image was very, very spiky. And as far as I understand it, it was claimed to be the output from the ECAT, and it strikes me that that would be making, because I said a long time ago, you can go and look, maybe 6-7 years ago on my Steemit, that you need to make these clusters and break them. You need to make them and break them. You can't get them too big, otherwise they'll start consuming the reactor, or they'll go into a black state and they'll escape the reactor. So you need to make them, keep them in a state of, in a white state so you can control them, and then break them, okay? So if you break them, then if it's captured electrons, and so what do you need to create electron-positron pairs? Well, you need a charge separation of about, well, twice the, well, you need a photon that's twice the energy of a positron and electron. So they're 511 keV each, so that's 1.2 mega electron volts or something like that. You need a photon that's that energy. And so, you know, you may be able to create that. There's certainly the charge separation. We've identified that in the recent paper on laser into a nonlinear plasma, you get up to, you get these little, what is it, 25 micron charge clusters effectively that are, have on their, the leading edge of the TORs, that they have a charge separation of 3.6 trillion volts per meter. Of course, it's not a very big structure, but anyway, the point is it's still got a lot of potential there to accelerate and charge separate. But anyway, that's kind of what you need to create positron-electron pairs. Whatever's going on in the system, I believe that they're building the charge cluster and it's blowing up, and what you're seeing is the vast array of electrons being captured, maybe by some sort of ball of electrodes, or a target if there's a drift tube in there, like Ken Shoulder's patents, and that they will be going through something like a Schottky diode or something that has a very fast on switching time. And I've said all this before when I was looking at other systems. You want a very fast switching time for the current to go through, but you don't want the back, you know, potential. So you want to make it one way. So something like that will be going on, creating this very, very spiky signal, and then that needs to be smoothed out and captured into a buffer of some type, like a capacitor or a battery of some type. So some accumulator of the overall charge that's generated. Anyway, so from my point of view, the signal in that image looks like it might be doing the job, because it's the kind of signal you would expect from these blowing up charge clusters. Unfortunately, the test doesn't go far enough to rule out other alternatives. A lot of people have reached out to me to ask my opinion, both in the LENR field and outside, and there it is in the round. Now there is this other announcement today by Eng8 or in recent days, and I just want to look at that announcement and then give some information that I can share, and I shall do that now. So if you just give me a second. Meanwhile, whilst I'm doing that, I just want to share another image with you from our good friend Dr. Takaaki Matsumoto, and you can enjoy this. So this is a spiral structure, and it's in a similar section of the book, but it's not in anywhere near the fidelity that you are able to, or you will be able to see it. and I'm showing it to you now. Let me get it for you. So here is the spiral structure in the book. Here. There we go. And we now have it in beautiful, beautiful quality. And what I did is I took a spiral galaxy from, I think it was Hubble, but I think you could probably use one from the James Webb. And you can see that the center of the bar spiral is here. You've got one part here and one part here. And this one goes out round here, round here, and round here. And this one starts here and it goes round here, round here, round here. And this was not clear when you looked at the original image in the book, but it's clear now. And if you overlay the two, then you can see the scale invariance of the electrodynamics that's going on in here that would be going on to form a bar spiral galaxy. And I think what the spiral, I looked at it and it was like several thousand, I think it was 7,000 light years across, or 7,300 light years. And I think the scale of this particular structure is obviously not 7,000 light years, otherwise it would have taken a very, very long time to scan at 4,800 dpi. It is, right, so the center here, basically one side of this is a 50 micron structure. Okay, a 50, thank you very much, Earthworm Jim, for your kind donation. A 50 micron here, 50 micron. So I would say this is an overall 200 micron structure. So this is a mid-range structure that allowed me to decode the wheel within a wheel within a wheel on the John Hutchison sample. Because the large structure was, what was it? It was, no, this is a smaller scale. But anyway, the scale invariance of these things is striking. And I'm pretty sure that if I overlaid the sacred geometry on here, it would line up wonderfully in the same way as the water vortices do. Okay, so you can have a look at that whilst I go and find this thing that I want to talk about now. Or I could do if I had actually loaded it into a different piece of software. Give me a second. Yeah, let's do it this way. Right. Do it that way, and you can see it there for your viewing pleasure. Right. Okay, so I'll just read the press release, which reads like an advertorial. What can I say? But they often do. Right. So, Eng8 achieves, this is the 17th of October 2024, Eng8 achieves another global first in the race for fusion energy, a self-powering fusion reactor producing excess electricity. Catalyzed fusion specialists at Eng8 International have confirmed the results of the recent independent validation of its energy cell conducted by world-renowned LENR, low-energy nuclear reactions expert Dr. Jean-Paul Biberian. I know Jean-Paul Biberian well, met him and engaged with him many times. He's done experiments to validate work we've done in the past, very specifically the wire observation that we had in October 2013, where when we were recharging with hydrogen, we saw an emission outside of our experimental Chelani cell, which tripled the background radiation count for about 90 seconds. We called it gamma at the time. Later, I realized it was the effect of a charge cluster and decay in the ionization tube of the electronics of the Geiger-Müller tube. The validation showed that the system can be self-powering and export net electricity. Dr. Jean-Paul Biberian said, "We consider that the device can operate indefinitely without an external input power." Dr. Biberian was commissioned by an investor to conduct technical due diligence on an energy cell. His report concluded the technology is capable of sustained operations producing kilowatts of output energy with a net 3 times more power output than input. Eng8 has a team of competent scientists very focused on plasma physics, and they have good engineers. And energy cells fuse hydrogen nuclei producing photons or light, as well as directly producing electrons or electricity. They are currently producing electricity on the scale of milliwatts to tens of kilowatts. Milliwatts to tens of kilowatts. This power output is suitable for powering devices like phones and laptops, appliances such as ovens and washing machines, and in time houses, cars and factories. Valeria Tuyatina, CEO at Eng8, said, "Whilst hot fusion struggles to produce net energy, catalyzed fusion technology is miles ahead and offers a viable source of zero emission, affordable energy to drive global economy. Our technology is mass producible, so everyone on the planet can have access to their own independent energy source. It's very encouraging that we already have several industrial customers who have confidence in the technology and have expressed interest in our energy cell. Frankly, if you weren't expressing interest in a system that can produce multiple times out electrical energy to electrical energy in, then you are utterly bonkers. Expressed interest is one thing. Signing contracts and actual shipments of devices that work for a long period of time safely is another. But anyway, this is good. With requirements ranging from 3 megawatts to 8 gigawatts. On a broader scale, 2024 is proving to be a significant year in the development of LENR, or cold fusion technology, as lab-based R&D matures and leading companies begin commercialization process, transitioning from science into engineering. The European Union has run the Clean HME program for the last 4 years, which has confirmed that LENR reactors can produce 10 times more energy than they consume. 3 members of Eng8 team recently presented at the 16th International Workshop of Anomalies and Hydrogen-Loaded Metals conference. That's where I was, organized by the Clean HME group. At the event, Alan Smith, you're in the house. I think he's in and watching. CEO of International Society for Condensed Matter Nuclear Science, ISCMNS, said, "If I were to bet on which LENR companies would be first to market, Eng8 would be in the top 2. And I think the other one would be Clean Planet, wouldn't it, Alan? Would it? Are you there?" I think it would be Alan. Alan would say that it would be... are you there, Alan? Can you confirm for me in the chat? Would you say that it was Clean Planet? Anyway, previous independent validations carried out by IEP Portugal and other renowned test laboratories have also produced energy cells produce net energy with safe levels of emission that are well within EU limits. About Dr. Biberian, Dr. Biberian has authored more than 80 research papers in the field of surface science and low-energy nuclear reactions. He is the editor-in-chief of the peer-reviewed journal devoted to LENR, the Journal of Condensed Matter Nuclear Science, and received the Preparata Medal in 2016, which is awarded to a scientist who has made significant contributions to the investigation and understanding of condensed matter nuclear science. About Eng8, currently domiciled in Gibraltar and based in Portugal, Eng8 is a 7-year-old business with a team of more than 30 scientists and engineers with decades of experience working on LENR, catalyzed fusion technologies and power generation. It is investing in and developing energy cells ranging from 1 watt to 1 megawatt in size. This is in parallel with chargers, modular generator sets and power plants that incorporate energy cells. During 2023, Eng8 successfully completed a $2 million investment round, which was supported by the Environmental Incubator and Accelerator 350 ppm. This fundraising resulted in a significant increase in share value, with the initial shareholders experiencing growth of £2 to £14 per share. The newly acquired funds were strategically allocated to business, operational and technology development. Eng8 is now raising an additional £2 million at £17 per share to enable it to build a beta version of its modular energy generator and to start commercial sales of energy by the end of 2025. So there is your sales pitch. That is the ask and the bid. And here is the sales pitch, I assume, but that's not necessarily the right thing to do. But this looks like it might be the device in question. Okay, so there you have it. And when I look at this device, it does look a lot like other devices that I have seen. It could look a lot like a souped up ECAT, but I thought I would ask and reach out to Dr. Jean-Paul Biberian, and he gave me this response. Are you ready? Are you ready? And you missed it. Blink and you miss it. It'll be back. There we go. Dear Bob, as you can imagine, I have signed an non-disclosure agreement. So, what I can say is in the press release. The only thing that I can add is that it is true. Regards, Jean-Paul Biberian. It is true. So, what is true? Well, I guess it's what's in that press release, which is where? Let me find it again. What he said in the press release is the technology is capable of sustained operations producing kilowatts of output energy with a net 3 times more power output than input. Right. Several things this doesn't say, but first off, big hand to Eng8 for getting kilowatt scale energy production. Fantastic. And, you know, Jean-Paul Biberian is, you know, he's pretty significant individual to say something like that. And he's absolutely categorically said, this is what's going on. What I will say is that no one has shown whether they can close the loop. Can they close the loop? It does say without any input power. They can continuously produce power without any input power. So here we go. So one would assume that they can close the loop. We can consider that the device can operate indefinitely without any external input power. It says we can consider that the device can operate indefinitely without any external input power. He does not say we operated the device indefinitely on its own generative output. It does not say that. This is not saying that the loop has been closed. And honestly, if you haven't closed the loop and you're producing electricity out and electricity in, and it is claimed to be 3 times more output power than input. Okay, so here's the thing. The technology is capable of sustained operations producing kilowatts of output energy. It does not classify what form that energy is in. Let me be very clear. That is not saying it produces 3 times more output in electrical energy. It says we're powering it by electrical input, but it does not say that that energy output is in the form of electricity. So given that, there's several issues here. 1, no closing the loop, no suggestion of closing the loop, and that almost certainly means you can't close the loop with this system at this stage, right? So 3 times more out than in, well, that is actually below what Benjamin Huang has achieved. Benjamin Huang has sustained output in the over unity typically around about 1.4. If he drives it hard, and you might be able to get it to run for a little while, driving it hard, he's had reactors hit 4. Klimov was hitting 11.7 times output. Okay? But in both cases, they're producing thermal heat out with kilowatts of electrical energy putting in. Okay? So this is not equivalent energy. So it's no closed loop, does not specify whether the output energy is in electrical energy, and if it was, they would have closed the loop, and there is the risk of strange radiation, because there will be the risk of strange radiation. So this is on a par, I would say, with the cavitator of Binge Huang, unless someone categorically says that the output is electrical and categorically says we've closed the loop and we can run this indefinitely. Okay? So I would like someone to come forward and clarify, what is the output energy in, what form is the output energy in? Is it in thermal? Is it in steam? Is it in electricity? If it is in electricity, why have you not closed the loop? Can you categorically say that you can close the loop? Can you? I want clarification on that, because this press release kind of looks a little bit like it's asking for money with a big bold claim and avoiding connecting those two things together, right? So I don't see the closing the loop. I don't see the type of energy coming out. It is far, far less bad in terms of not saying the whole truth than the nonsense you get from the plasma fusion, laser fusion out of the US. Sorry guys, but like when you're putting vast amounts of energy in and you're only receiving a thermal, incredibly small pulse of energy that exceeds the actual laser impinged energy rather than everything to run the system. Nah, sorry, not going to work. And the same problem with ITER. It was never and will never produce more electrical energy out than electrical energy in. Will never do it. And they've had to admit it now after 10, 11 years of Stephen Crivet actually bringing the receipts. So it's the same kind of thing going on here. And, we're going to be in a situation potentially with the Klimov replication and variations on the Binge Huang when we are producing consistently 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 times output thermal. And when you get to that level and you are producing steam, you are then in a position through the Carnot cycle to be able to generate power that can then be used to drive the system, right? So not happening, not impressed. Okay, so they need to clarify what they are talking about there. So about holding people's feet to the fire, we are going to be relentless, absolutely relentless. Yes, there is a lot of potential to deliver electrical energy, as Ken Shoulder said. The risk with having a system that's got electrodes and it's got gas in there and you're driving it hard is that you are going to destroy the reactor. The two devices that I think they have is one which is based on the George Eagley type, which I had great long discussions with him in India and several times and in Japan, and essentially aluminium electrodes, pulse discharges, but the electrodes will decay over time. So that's going to have this reactor electrodes fail after a period of time. The system that's in this particular system might work for an experiment to prove that it does the claim of producing more energy out than in. We've got a question about what form that energy is in. Now I want to show you that. So their other system is basically a plasma flow a discharge system, a vortical one, and it's very similar to that done by Anatoly Klimov. And if you want to go and get the full heads up on that, I suggest you go and look at this video here from the recent Cold Fusion conference in Russia. There is translations now from the original Russian that I did real time during the events, but there's also the ones by Google, I think. But basically he goes through the history of their research. So main results obtained during the plasmoid vortex reactor in the period from 2022 to 2024. And if we go through, you can see, I think this is his patent or something. And you can see that they have a fairly big team working on this. Here we go. So you can see Anatoly Klimov here in the middle. And the team, I think I have been in this facility. Maybe I haven't been in that facility back in 15 rather. Here is the schematic. You have these huge ceramic insulators because it was based on a Tesla coil, and the actual device came about, as far as I understand it, after he had spent some time with Kenneth Shoulders. Okay? And so you can see here's a very high, so this looks like a very, very large, what do you call it? You have creating the sparks in cars, okay? And you can see the plasma vortex reactor here. So I'm not so sure. So here's another example. I think this is one where they're actually running it underwater to directly heat water. They've got a mass flow pump here. So you can see the very high potential here, the coils involved. Sometimes you can see the Tesla coil involved in some of these. So I recommend you go and look and study at the diagrams that they have here. So this might be the one where they go into the water here. Yeah, other examples here. Underwater plasmas. So really, I'll try and do a translation into English of this. You can see some of the elements that come about. The synthesis. Okay, so maybe I can just play this from here. Okay. Copper and aluminium as electrodes. Then expected elements appeared. Well, this is understandable. One or more hydrogen is introduced. There is zinc and there is iron. Magnesium. But what was produced is carbon, magnesium, a little bit of silicon. There's the zinc in there. But look at the iron. So they got copper and aluminium electrodes, but look at the amount of iron produced. Now, where does all that iron come from, do you think? Where does all that iron come from? Anyone got any ideas? Okay. The main mechanism of production of the energy is production of new elements. It's not a fantasy. This isn't some chemical diffusion. This is real transmutation. Okay. So you get the idea. And he does spectras. So another implementation here. And he goes into great depths with all of these. Talking about the COP here. So here we go. This is what I'm saying. It's about the same kind of technology in my view. Look at the COP here. 3.08, 3.1, 3.03, 3.11, 3.20. Yeah? Kind of the same ballpark COP as was claimed by the Eng8 tests. This is why I think it's basically the same kind of devices. And if Klimov is not in the team, because there are Russians or Russian speakers in the team, then he damn well should be. If he's not like a silent partner in this. So he's showing, I think, the signals here. So there's a lot of information here. And then he goes into a second patent where they're... Sorry, this is an advert. Sorry. I'll go back to my mugshot whilst that's playing. Any questions? Right. And this advert is still playing. Sorry. Okay. There we go. So he's got a whole bunch of detectors here. And he's trying to look for radiation. And what he found in this experiment is actually after they ran the experiment, the gamma signal coming from a gamma source was suppressed for a couple of days. Where have we heard that before? Where have we heard that before? Now, is that because there is something going on that makes a radioactive isotope unstable that leads to the emission of a gamma ray, but that the thing that's causing that is now extracted from the environment so that the nuclear decay can't occur, resulting in the gamma ray? What could that be? What are we removing from the environment that would then make radioactive elements more stable? It's not that they haven't got the same potential, it's that they are less able to decay. What is being removed from the environment? Okay, so I love their experiments. They're wonderfully large. Okay, so I encourage everyone to go and see this. You can see the sort of melt zones here. These kind of patterns that we have come to expect. And that is that. So, right. So I think that the one that you see in the image here on the advertorial for the Eng8 release here, this one here is a plasma vortex style reactor. And it is producing a COP that's expected from a device similar to Anatoly Klimov's. And you can see the high tension inputs here. I don't know whether this is some, this is either nylon and then they've got some fused quartz inside, or this might actually be some sort of alumina ceramic that's cast, either cast or lathed. Okay, so I think that's what's going on. This is a funding call, and this is clever wording, in my view, to avoid saying that we're not closing the loop, because we can't close the loop because the energy output is actually not in the form of electricity, it's in the form of heat, and in which case it's no better than Anatoly Klimov's patented plasma flow vortex system, and it's less good than ordinary cavitation hydrosonic pump type devices if they are built, and if we can build them by Kladov's type of design with added elements. So to hold people's feet to the new fire, I would like to remind people that at ICCF 15, ICMNS 15, we reminded people that we will be working on this device here, Project Zeus. Not this device. Let me see if I can get back there. There we go. Project Zeus, and we will be using the plasma here, a ball lightning, and is it going to let me do it? No. Come on. And we have two modes. One where we have a sacrificial fuel coming in here, like was done by Nikola Tesla in the 1930s in his electrical particles of matter beam gun. Or we can maybe line this and do it without having a sacrificial cathode material. And we are relying on the fact that ball lightning spins at a very, very high velocity, the charges proximate to it, and then using the field produced by those charges to induce current in a inductor. Okay? And when these things shoot off towards our cathode, anode that would be up here, it would impact it, but it's not a critical part of the device. It's just the target where the structures would drift to when they become unstable. We could capture the energy of the electrons released when they come there as well. So that's basically it. So we're very, very hopeful that either Rossi or Eng8 are successful. There are not clear situations in both cases. So we're just going to move ahead, and hopefully in a couple of days or before the end of the month, there will be another meeting. Lots of progress has been made on the DAO, which is something that I am supporting on the basis that all these various technologies are produced as a minimum viable product. So the idea is that the project would assist in the DAO creating like the VHS of these systems. So people can not even the VHS, just an open source minimum viable product that people can go ahead and add their own ideas to once they know they've got something working. But everything is moving in the right direction. And there's one thing that we must recognize in each of these systems. They are all reliant on charge clusters. They're all reliant on these fractal toroidal structures, these fractal toroidal moments. The systems from Eng8, absolutely, the low-end systems are based on Dr. George Eagley's work, which are based on ball lightning, which he says are plasmoids. The plasmoids didn't have a full description of what their substructures were. That was the start point for Ken Shoulders. He went through to exotic vacuum objects, but as you saw, after he had issued his book and his patents, he still didn't understand how the electrodynamics could confine the electrons. There was some work done by Hal Puthoff on how maybe the Casimir effect could do it, but we know from physical experiment and witness marks that this is a fractal toroidal structure, because our impact structures match those observed by Winston Bostick way back in 1980 with his colleague, and that also the unseen work of Dr. Takaaki Matsumoto were these toroids with subtoroids, and as I've showed you before, unpublished work was of these very clear toroids of toroids, and in one case it was a toroid with toroids and subtoroids, and it would look like there's about 48 subtoroids in the subtoroids. Okay, so and there we go. So they're all based on this technology. So we know we're on the right path. The claimant's coming out. And the other thing is, even with the other person that I believe Alan Smith believes is one of the top two, that is Clean Planet, they have these oxygen-rich spots in their palladium deuterated materials, it's nickel palladium or nickel copper, whatever it is. They have these oxygen-rich spots, and we know that these structures will pull in the paramagnetic oxygen and or synthesize it. So I think that they have the same thing going on. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them now. I will be going shortly to Florida for this interview. I don't know when that's going to go out. Hopefully on, as I said at the beginning, the Kickstarter will launch this week if all goes to plan. It will launch on the here we go, the 24th of the 10th, 24, 1 second before midnight on that day, and it'll run for 48 days, and 1 second before the 12th of 12th, 24, it will conclude, and the name of the Kickstarter will be Understanding the Transformational Magic of Ball Lightning. Understanding the Transformational Magic of Ball Lightning. And I hope everyone can take part in that Kickstarter. There's going to be lots of really good things for you to get your hands on. And one of them will be my personal copy, which I have over here. My very personal copy of his book, signed by him. I'm going to give this up for the greater good. So that will be one of the things up for grabs. There will be individual small images, which people will have the option for me to sign on the back to authenticate if they wish or not. They normally dated on the back when they were printed in the 1990s. Large composites as well. And yeah, several things that are totally, or many things that are totally unique. And so you'll see there will be several stretch goals. I think the project and myself have spent about £16,500 so far to get it to where we are, with 2 trips to Japan and supporting show to be there, and all the accommodation and flights and buying equipment, and yeah, excluding my time. And thank you to Jordan Collins and his wife, who spent the best part of a month and a half for one, and best part of 2 months, but not all the time doing it, but they've done a significant contribution in getting the images scanned, and now I have to go through them and stitch them together and stuff, but it's going to be a wonderful thing. Okay, so I'm going to have a look to see if you've got any questions. Have you read the paper from Project Condign? It's a UK UAP report, and it's heavily based on the study of ball lightning. I haven't read it, but I'm pretty sure it would be. Yeah, the reason I chose this title is, I mean, I have a subtitle which is the same name as the book, or at least it includes it. But, you know, he realized it was ball lightning, and effectively it's doing magic. And this is transformational. It's transformational to our planet, our society, when we understand it. And understanding what it can do is going to step change what humans are and what we can do both on this planet, in harmony with this planet, and also when we are able to use this technology to get to other planets in other solar systems to terraform them if necessary. So Earthworm Jim, question: will I receive my prize for the sacred geometry competition in Prague before Xmas? Yes. There were 4 people, actually it was 3, but 2 tied, and they will get it. And my challenge is with that, I need to actually go through the the images and select which ones are possible to give out. Oh, is it? So from Thought is saying this is exactly what the Project Condign speaks about. Yeah, okay. Okay. So Ken Pratt says, Bob, is the DAO the new gateway for the MFMP? No, the DAO is it's separate too. There is a suggested commitment from the DAO that if it was raising money and after the production of the minimum viable products, it was then able to go on and produce commercial items, as anyone would be entitled to from the start point of the minimum viable products, and it was able to generate funds. There would be something like a 5% kickback. This isn't settled, and of course this will all be in the white paper, so it's still very much in development. And I've told the people that are involving themselves with the DAO, because with the best will in the world, this is going to take a gargantuan effort, and you can't. I can't do it all. I can come up with 10 ideas in a day, but I might need to spend a lifetime developing one of them. So this is why I put out the ideas, and hopefully they might be picked up on. But whatever I do my thinking, and correlation and joining the dots. I will support the DAO, and I've told them specifically, and I would encourage everyone to support the DAO in their mission to produce the minimum viable products. The DAO will be directly funding with the participants of the voting parties, which could be all of you for as little as $2, who receives the funding. So the idea is that it's totally traceable where the money goes from. It has a ledger in the blockchain. People can see that they voted for, say, Henk Uren to receive some money, or Tony Gibboni to receive some money, or whoever else to receive money to do a particular amount of research, or towards a research goal. And the outputs will be published, and you can see that. So I would still do my job, which is to facilitate communication for the interests of all in the community. So like I would be like a communication party in the way that they would be doing actual experiments more full time. So if you can understand that, but it's still it's still in the works, and so you'll have a big update on. There's a huge amount of work gone in already, and you're going to see a big update in the next live call, which you can participate in. But we'll avoid some interjections. Let's put it like that. So Gordon Doherty, thank you. I think I'm going to go to bed as well. So just before you go. So yeah, I'm going to America to do this interview. Then, if fortune favours the situation, I'll be staying on in America to go to Miami, and I will be schooling as best as I can Randall Carlson in getting the science right. For a presentation that will be given to the Hereticon Ball that is run by the Founders Fund and under Peter Thiel. So I think I understand that he will be giving about an hour presentation to that, and I want to make sure that he gets that right, and also to help him before he goes on probably the world's biggest podcast in the future. Or certainly one of the bigger podcasts, which has a lot of exposure potentially in the new year, so that he can get the science right alongside his understanding of where the thunderstorm generator is at. So I want to at least make sure that I'm not trying to deal with things that are misunderstood, so that more people can come in without misconceptions as they start understanding the whole kind of smorgasbord of technology that this makes possible. So I'll be doing that, and then I'll be coming back. I have to do something in the UK for a period of time, and then I'll be going to an undisclosed location, and I will be replicating the claimed experiments of, or attempting to replicate the claimed experiments of Nikola Tesla. And I have my sample rods here. I have one control here, and I have two sample rods. So I've got 3 sample rods, and I've got other materials as well. You can hear them here, right? And these little puppies, I hope to do what was said by George Vassilitos that Tesla did in the 1800s, where he would hold a piece of metal in his hand and it would turn to jelly, or it would explode in his hand. And so I'm going to try this, and I'm going to do it between the 10th and the 14th of December in a dry location with equipment I believe might do this, and we're going to try and capture it on film. And the reason I'm choosing the 10th to 14th of December is, if you've been following along, relative neutrinos are gravitationally lensed, and when it's within those dates, which is when in 2012, on the 12th of the 12th of the 12th, it was midway between the 10th to the 14th. It just happened to be like that, but it wasn't until I read the work of Joe Parr that it turns out that Betelgeuse, the Earth, and the black hole at the center of our galaxy are in alignment, so you get the maximum lensed relative neutrino flux from the cosmos. And so that gives you the optimum time to try this experiment. So I will try it with these special metals, which I believe might be the most susceptible, and I will get some other metals, and I will try multiple times to see if we can turn this to jelly and leave my fingerprints in the metal. And we will also then be looking to make open a functional magnetic motor. It's one of the original ones, and it's called the Wilhelm Müller motor, and we're looking to produce open source plans of that in the coming year and onwards. So there will be a meeting surrounding that aim. Hi, Carmen. Yes, so Carmen is in the chat. Hi, Carmen, and it will be a test. I will be seeing this thing for the first time, and Carmen is going to give me access to some of the materials, and I will analyze those and see where we are with that. And so we're going to be doing a whole series of things there to see what we can do. First with showing, because basically what happened was Tesla did these magic tricks, it would appear, with the ball lightning, the magic of ball lightning, and he transformed his metal rods into either exploded metal rods or jelly. And so simultaneously, if we can achieve this, we will be doing a bit of the Hutchison effect as well. Yes, from the true charge separation, yeah. Well, I don't. Brandon B is asking me to see if the vases that I will be looking at sound like the Hutchison metal. Well, I'm not going to hit them too hard because they are ridiculously valuable. Yes, and Carmen says we will be. I'll be looking at, and we'll be talking about Tesla's lost prototype that she has. Well, Grand Obra, I would be very interested in hearing your comments on that. He says, I believe I can make a device now and rival Fermilab $2 billion experiment in my garage. Wonderful. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly wrap up here. This is the new fire here? Well, I would argue it's always been here. It is eternal. And is it through a vortex going into the phase singularity of a fractal toroidal moment in a spherical ball, micro ball lightning cluster and clusters thereof? I would argue yes. And here is one of the beautiful images that will become part of the full color book of Matsumoto. And just to say that when this does go live, we are going to, when the full production versions are done, we're going to have them in a fabric bound, hardbound, and and gold inlay like this 1955 wireless world. January to December 1955. This is actually the one where the person that I think it was the guy that came and did the electronics for the Integratron. Anyway, he has patent in here for communications. Anyway, it's going to be red in the official version that other people will be able to buy, but on Kickstarter it will be in black. So the black fabric will be with the gold inlay. It will only be for the Kickstarter. So they will be unique ones made for the Kickstarter and never after the ones that are produced as part of the Kickstarter. So, right. So then we discussed the overview. We looked through Hal Fox on EVs, where the state of play was in 1996, and we showed that indeed we have been able to produce palladium and even gold and silver in a system that didn't in fact have lead, but definitely and certainly had charge clusters. And I believe, looking at this image again, that this in the center of the overall structure that's deposited on the nickel foil here, that given that this is a ring of nickel, this is almost certainly carbon. This sphere in the center and the structure of it looks like an iron-rich crenellated disk. Sphere rather, iron-rich crenellated sphere. And we have heavier elements in little blobs around the outside, silver and so forth. And then we looked at the Eng8 press release, and I discussed first that Rossi's technology might be real because of an image of the output. It's what I would expect. In the case of Eng8, I have no problem in thinking they can achieve thermal output on electrical input. Is this deceptive? Is it not telling the whole truth? They're not closing the loop. They would have absolutely said they're closing the loop if it was electrical output and electrical input. So you have to take this for what it is. And in what it is not any better in terms of its output than a cavitation system like Binger and Huang's. It's prettier in terms of the fact that you've got a flashy thing in the process. And it's probably doing material consumption during its operation, and it is no different in many respects to what is being done here by Anatoly Klimov in his plasma flow vortex tubes. Not this advert, but I showed you that. But I can say that what is said in this press release here is confirmed by Jean-Paul Barbarian. He says, the only thing that I can add is that it is true, what is said in the press release. Okay. So with that, I will say, unless there's no more questions. Okay, I will. I think I've got your email, Grand Obra. You said you can send me a PDF. Okay. thank you very, very much. Here's a new fire here. My name is Bob Greenyer. Buenas noches, dobranoc, noc, good night.